On Saturday, the 13th of June 2026, Bungie released the final time-gated piece of content for Destiny 2 Pantheon Insurrection Prime Revolutionary, which combined the bosses from the previous two Pantheons released during Monument of Triumph and added a new reprised encounter, Insurrection Prime, which many will recognize as the final boss from the Sunset Scourge of the Past raid. So now that every encounter is playable and we're soon going to be able to choose specific encounters to farm next week, today I'm taking you through my complete no BS guide to every Pantheon encounter, including encounter challenges for those seeking a greater, well, challenge. So if you find today's guide helpful, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, but without further ado, let's begin. First on the list is Argos, the final boss from the old vanilla D2 raid layer, Eater of Worlds, and he's come back mostly the same with a couple differences plus a unique challenge. So let's get into it. To start the encounter, begin by breaking all 4 oracles attached to Argos's cage, which then plays a short cutscene and then you're off. The arena is split into 3 different sections: Arc side, aka spawn, Void side, aka left, and Solar side, aka right. So first of all, split your team into 3 groups of 2, sending each group to their own side. After that, nearby each zone, a yellow bar hobgoblin will spawn that once defeated drops a Vex cranium on the ground for a total of 3 craniums. And before you pick it up, you first need to establish the colors of 3 energy balls that will randomly appear on one of the 3 sides. In this example, it's 2 Arc, 1 Void, and what this means is you'll need to take each cranium you obtain to either Arc, Solar, or Void side to cook it and align it to an elemental cranium. And taking the example from earlier, this means you need 2 Arc and 1 Void cranium, and they take around 30 seconds or so to cook, so you'll need to wait a little bit before depositing. But once you've got all 3 correct craniums ready, have 3 players collect each one, and on a countdown, fire the lasers at the energy balls, which moves them towards the center of Argos's energy shield, and if done right, his shield will lower and the damage phase begins. To actually start damaging Argos, you first need to break 2 weak spots on his body, which causes him to stagger, and typically it's preferable to break his arm and head. They don't take much to break, and once you're done, damage Argos as much as possible while avoiding the detain nets he shoots out and hopefully secure the 1 phase. This boss is quite squishy, so most things will work on him. Anarchy Sniper works, but so does Leviathan's Breath with Mobius Quiver, Heavy Sniper 2. For a full list of meta choices, definitely check out our previous video on exactly that. But you should be all good, and after the damage phase is over, if you don't manage to 1 phase, it all restarts like normal. Currently, there's also a method to instantly start the damage phase, skipping all mechanics, which may or may not be patched, but here's how to do it anyway. Before starting, jump behind the rally flag and nestle yourself on these rocks, and after joining allies, that's it. The damage phase simply starts and all mechanics are skipped. But do keep in mind, the whole team does have to do this. It doesn't work otherwise. So definitely take advantage of this while you can for quick and easy farms. Moving on to the next encounter, we have Warpriest returning from King's Fall. And the best way I can describe this encounter is if Totems and Warpriest were merged together into a singular encounter. And here is how to do it. Split your team into 2 teams of 3, 1 for left and 1 for right. Assign 1 player from each team to collect a brand from the side platforms and run towards the annihilated totems and sit on them to prevent them from wiping the team. While sitting on the plate, the totem players should kill adds to generate stacks of Death Singer's power on the left of their screen, and the more stacks, the better. While this is happening, the other 2 members of each squad will enter into the Warpriest arena, and on both the left and right sides, a wizard will spawn which needs to be killed. And then after that, a Blightguard Knight spawns which also needs to be killed because they drop an item called a Brand Claimer, and Brand Claimers are used to claim the brands from the left and right side room players. And you'll want to do this because the brands themselves have timers on them which kill the player holding them if allowed to tick to 0. So after the Warpriest arena players kill knights, have 1 of them on each side bring the Brand Claimer to the side rooms and take the brand off the players on the plates. After that, the plate players need to return to middle and deposit their stacks of Death Singer's power on plates, starting with the right plate. Standing on the plate removes stacks and charges up your damage phase, and I believe you need to deposit around 100 stacks in order for the damage sequence to begin. So continue cycling players from both left and right onto this plate, and eventually a text prompt will show up in chat saying the Warpriest deems you worthy, and after a short delay, the right plate will begin glowing red. And in that moment, whatever you do, do not step on the plate because that will prematurely begin the damage phase, and the damage phase itself requires a little bit of setup. Around the time Warpriest deems you worthy, the players returning from both the left and right sides should have a decent amount of stacks of Deathsinger's power, which is important because the more stacks of Deathsinger's power you have, the more damage time you get. So the player who collects the red brand to start damage should be one of the players who return with high stacks, because as you can see here, I collect the brand with 26 Deathsinger's power, which converts into 26 stacks of Brand of the Initiate at the top of my screen, counting down, which acts as a timer. At the same time, knights will spawn on left and right again, but this time they will drop brands, not brand claimers. There is a difference, especially when it comes to the challenge, but you can basically think of them as claimers, because during damage you will need to use them to take off the player who starts damage in order to extend the damage phase. Two players with high stack counts of Deathsinger's power must be the ones to collect the brands dropped by the taken knights, because again, just like the damage brand, when they take the brand off the initial player, they get more time with it because they have high stacks, as seen in this clip. So just make sure you're audibly counting down and coordinating swaps during damage and you should be okay. Our team stands at the very far back of the arena because it avoids most of the incoming fire from ads, but it really doesn't matter. And I've also been told that taking both brands instantly compounds the timers into one long timer, removing the need to coordinate swaps, which I'm pretty sure works, though I haven't tested myself. I'll update a pinned comment to confirm this works. After the damage phase ends, make sure to quickly retreat and hide behind one of 3 pillars. We typically start with right, and after a short pause, the encounter restarts like normal. As far as the challenge is concerned, this one is a little tricky. You can never collect the same brand twice in a row, which sounds fine, but it also factors in the 2 damage brands and doesn't reset per phase. The order persists and must be remembered. When doing the challenge, the journey of an individual player looks like this. Say you're first on right, you collect brand, get kills, then it gets taken off you, you deposit your stacks on right, but then you go top left and collect the brand claimer from there, rather than right side, and run to left side instead of right and claim the brand off the left player. After that, it's back to mid with your stacks, deposit them, and you're back to right side. The thing to keep in mind is that the damage brands are counted separately, so you can, in fact, collect the right damage brand after immediately owning the right mechanics brand, because they're on 2 separate checkers. But if you're the guy who grabs damage brands, if in phase 1 you start with, say, the right one, in phase 2 you must collect the left one instead, because you can't do 2 of the same one in a row. I know it sounds a little confusing, but just remember it like this. Mechanics and damage brands are 2 separate systems, and any individual player cannot collect 2 of the same brand twice in a row. But you can collect a damage and mechanics brand from the same side back to back because they are counted separately. Moving on to encounter 3, we have Gahlran, again a returning boss from the original Crown of Sorrow raid layer, which has actually come back basically 1 for 1. Here's how it works. Start the encounter by splitting your team into 3 groups of 2 into the 3 separate corners of the map. But before you do, have 1 player from each group stand by the rally flag location, because once the encounter begins, a buff pool will spawn here that grants Witch's Blessing when collected, and 1 player from each group must have this buff. On each of the 3 sides, waves of ads will spawn that only a buffed player can shoot, and another that only a non-buffed player can shoot. So help each other out by clearing what you can, all while keeping an eye on your buff timer, because if you allow Witch's Blessing to tick all the way to 0, you die. So to prevent this, nearby on each side there are these pink circles with a ball in the middle known as Witch's Vessels that you can use to swap buffs with your partner. Easily done by shooting the ball while you're both inside it, and doing so will transfer the buff to your partner and fully refresh the timer. Make sure to continue doing this to prevent unnecessary deaths, and eventually on one of the 3 sides, Gahlran will spawn Gahlran's Deception, a miniature version of him that must be killed in order to progress. First of all, in order to break the Deception shield, you need to have both a buffed and non-buffed player melee him, which will stun him, and shortly after that, wait around for the real Gahlran to do his fireball attack, after which his hand will glow green. Shooting his hand when it's in this state will cause him to recoil and summon a giant axe, which will crush the Deception, fully killing it, which, dare I say, is one of the coolest raid mechanics ever. After you break the shield of a Deception, in 99% of cases, the buff player's buff is consumed, meaning they will need to get it back again, and the way to do this is by once again standing inside a Witch's Vessel, calling something like Llama needs buff, and then one of the players on the other 2 sides who has buff can shoot the Witch's altar from afar at the same time as you, and you'll be transferred the buff again. The player giving it to you does not need to be inside the altar, they can do it from a distance. And also, I say 99% of the time your buff is taken because there are cases where it simply isn't and you don't need to rebuff, just so you're aware. Each side will need to kill their own deception, and after the third one dies, shortly thereafter, on each side, the copies of Gahlran will begin readying a wipe attack where their hands begin glowing green and connecting to their faces. And in order to prevent the wipe, you must shoot both of the green glowing hands and then his head to stun him / reveal the real Gahlran. You'll know if yours is real if after doing the hands and face, he recoils rather than simply vanishing. And in about 10 to 15 seconds, the damage phase begins. But before you focus on that, by far the most important thing you must do is swap your buffs again one final time after stunning Gahlran, because this way you will have the longest buff duration throughout all of damage, preventing any unnecessary deaths. So stun the boss, quickly swap, and then head to damage. Damage will also begin with a hand-breaking phase, and eventually you will need to do this 2 more times during damage, after which the phase is over shortly after breaking for a 3rd time. And if by this point you don't manage to kill him, it's important that everyone goes back to their witches' vessels or group on one together to swap buffs again, because chances are at the end of DPS they're all pretty low on timers and need a refresh, after which the encounter resumes like normal. The challenge for this encounter brings back a mechanic from the original fight where while you're doing mechanics, void crystals will intermittently spawn on each side in a clockwise rotation that must be broken before they detonate, causing a wipe. To break the crystals, have both the buff and non-buff players step inside it and punch the crystal, and that's it. Just make sure to stay on top of them and you'll be all good. The next encounter is the Consecrated Mind from Garden of Salvation, and much like Warpriest, this fight is essentially a combination of the prelude and boss encounters, relays and Consecrated Mind, with a couple key differences. To start, split your team up so that one player goes to each of the 4 corners of the map featuring a relay, and also send another 5th player directly into the middle to defend the 5th relay as well. But before that, have at least 2 players link the tether box to relay 1 in order to activate the portals at 1. This leaves one player as a floater who will run around helping people out if and when they need it. But more on that later. The first order of business is linking all 5 relays so that every player has a buff called Enlightened, which will allow them to break the shields off of adds that spawn. And to do this, the player who's in charge of defending the middle relay will first kill the Angelic in mid, blocking the tether box, then use it to tether to the middle relay with the 6th floater player who follows them there, and then kill an initial wave of adds. After the first add wave is dead, this middle player briefly leaves middle towards relay number 2 and helps the player defending 2 to buff by linking together. Then the same for relay number 1 by taking the nearby portal, and then back to middle again to defend their own relay. While this is happening, the 6th floater player immediately after buffing in mid will need to run to relay number 4 and do the same thing, help them link at 4, then run towards relay 3 and repeat. After which, across the entire encounter space, everyone should have a buff. After each side has finished clearing the waves of adds that spawn, a loud sound cue will trigger and text in the bottom right will show undergrowth defenses subsided. And from this point on, rather than having the floater assist with buffing, every player defending a relay will have a new portal they can take behind them that teleports them to middle, and they should all link inside of mid instead to refresh their enlightened timer. That is, all but one side, because the actual boss will teleport to one of the 4 relay locations while this is happening, and if you're in charge of a relay and the boss is there with you, you cannot teleport to mid because eventually the boss will create a voltaic overflow which must be collected quickly, otherwise a wipe will occur. Collecting the overflow will slow you down, and the boss plays an animation where 3 of the 6 glowing eyes on his fins will glow red, and your job is to break all 3 before the boss wipes you. Easily done with a rocket pulse or any other high damage weapon, but this is where your 6th floater player can help because they can assist with eye breaking. Simply call either inner or outer for them depending on which set of eyes is glowing, and they can help shoot. So while a relay player and the floater are dealing with the boss, during a subside the other 4 players can link inside of mid, then use the portals to head back to their sides and repeat. After some time, yellow bar hobgoblins will begin spawning near the 4 relays, and killing them will drop 5 voltaic motes, which then need to be deposited in the middle relay for a total of 30 to start the damage phase. And this part of the encounter is really slow. You'll be waiting for a good while for all 30 motes to be deposited, and this is also where the 6th floater player can help again because they can cover for a relay while the player in charge of defending it leaves to dunk their motes in middle. Remember to continue linking in mid after each subside, unless you have boss of course, and eventually after 30 motes are deposited, the boss will begin moving towards middle and damage will begin, where you'll need to break all the eyes on his face, exposing a central big eye to shoot. I definitely recommend precision weapons like the heavy sniper refurbished A499, Wisp Whisper of the Worm or Queenbreaker with Particle Reconstruction, and we also opted to use Divinity for a one-phase strategy because number 1, the boss's crit is tiny, and number 2, in classic Consecrated Mind fashion, he runs away from you during damage, so anything to make actually hitting your damage easier is very much required. Side note, the Divinity catalysts are Focused Fury and Jolting Feedback, so if you have it, as the Div player, you'll be doing even more damage, which can drop from this encounter too. After damage ends, if you fail to one phase, make sure to kill the Angelic Hydra in mid, link all 6 players using the mid box, and then resume like usual, relinking each relay again and starting over. The challenge for this encounter is called Split the Bill and requires you to dunk 5 motes per player per phase in the same order across phases. So if I dunk my 5 motes first, I must dunk 5 motes first in phase 2 as well. And a good way we found to track this was by typing in chat a number from 1 to 6 when we deposited motes to keep track of who deposited when. 5th on the list of bosses is Emperor Calus, the returning final boss from Destiny 2's first raid Leviathan, and again there are basically 0 changes from the original. When the encounter begins, you're first going to clear a few waves of ads before Calus does his iconic clap and sends all 6 players into the Shadow Realm. And it's here that 3 players will need to take the 3 teleporters back into the throne room and 3 players remain in the Shadow Realm. Inside the Shadow Realm, Calus will begin pulling players towards him, which can only be stopped by standing behind barriers on the ground. And once every 20 seconds or so, Calus's forehead will show a symbol, either axes, dog, cup, or sun, which must be called out from each of the 3 players because they will all see a unique symbol. So for example, it could be cup, sun, dog, and then inside the throne room, there will be 4 scions that each have the same symbols above their heads. And your job as the throne players is to melee the scion whose symbol was not called out by the Shadow Realm players. In this example here, I melee axes because the Shadow Realm callouts were cup, sun, and dog. And I keep doing this a few more times based on new callouts that are happening. Killing the correct scion spawns the next barrier inside the Shadow Realm, allowing the players in there to move forwards, making sure to dodge raised platforms while doing so, and also while in here, be sure to kill regular scions that spawn as well as the projections to prevent them from wiping you. Eventually, once the Shadow Realm players reach the end of the track, Calus will begin spewing out purple skulls that need to be shot in order to generate stacks of Force of Will, which essentially acts as a multiplier to your boss damage, so get as many stacks as possible, preferably 100 plus, and while this is happening, inside the throne room, Calus will begin his wipe animation by raising his hands into the air and vibrantly glowing, and it's the job of the players in the throne to damage him so that his shield lowers to really low HP. Then, once enough skulls are collected by the Shadow Realm team, around 100, fully break the shield to prevent his wipe and allow the Shadow team to teleport back into the throne. After that, to actually deal damage to Calus, you'll be required to stand on the 4 plates that the scions used to stand on, and keep hopping between them after each one is expended, and be sure to watch out for Calus's napalm barrage attack after you've exposed some of his more robotic components, because even on normal mode, it can seriously hurt you. The challenge for this encounter brings back a mechanic from Prestige Leviathan where meleeing a scion in the throne room will randomly swap out a Shadow Team player with the one who meleeed the scion. But also there's an additional layer where you cannot melee a new scion until everyone else on the team has, so you have to do a 6-man rotation to satisfy the challenge, which I do believe also carries across phases, so make sure to keep track of this. The second to last boss is Morgeth the Spirekeeper, returning from Last Wish, and this time the encounter is similar to the original but also completely different in the best way possible, so let's get into it. To begin, split your team into 2 groups of 3. One team goes left and one team goes right, and have one of those 6 players collect the Taken Strength Orb in the middle of the arena, and then shortly after killing a few waves of ads, 2 more Taken Strength will spawn, one of which must be collected by the person who collected the first strength and the other by someone else. Then, after a few seconds, the player who has 2 stacks of Taken Strength will get trapped by Morgeth, immobilizing them and setting them on a death timer. And in order to free this player, another player must collect an Eye of Riven relic dropped by a nearby orange bar taken captain, bringing it to the trapped player and pressing their grenade key. Doing so will free the trapped player and transfer the 2 stacks of Taken Strength they had to the one who freed them. A split second later, both players will be teleported into Riven's heart, where they will need to carry out some additional mechanics. As soon as they are teleported in, back in the main Morgeth arena, 2 Last Wish symbols will appear on the door behind Morgeth. In this example, we can see Singlefish and Infinity Snake, and both of these must be communicated to the 2 players who are brought inside Riven's heart, because out of the 2 players who are in there, the one who has 2 stacks of strength, aka the one who freed the guy who was trapped initially, can see multiple more last wish symbols above additional taken strength dotted throughout the room. And the player who has no strength, aka the one who was freed, cannot see the symbols, but they can interact with the strength. And here's what needs to happen. After receiving the call out from the main arena, both of those symbols will be visible to the player who has 2 strength in the heart, and it's their job to direct the player without strength to the symbols that are not those. In this example, the mid-room callouts are bird diving down and dragon breathing fire right, and on top of those two, I can also see stripper dragon and infinity snake. So I direct the player with no strength onto the symbols that weren't called out, and then they collect them to amass their own taken strength. After that, back in the main arena, 2 more taken strength will spawn and the process repeats. Someone collects them, they get trapped, they get freed, both players get teleported into the heart, 2 more callouts are given, which again they must avoid collecting and instead collect the odd ones, and eventually there will come a point where all 6 players are inside the heart. At this point, a new taken strength will spawn that once collected will begin the damage phase, and be sure to make it so the player collecting this one has no more than 1 strength because you cannot hold more than 2 or you die. So ideally the player to do this is the one who was trapped 3rd in the main arena because their strength was transferred off them after teleporting in. Damage here is pretty simple, just aim for the sacks above his head, but if your team is incapable of one phasing, you'll need to stun him, otherwise at the end of the damage phase he will wipe you. So here's how to do that. Inside the heart, around halfway through the mechanics portion, another Eye of Riven taken captain will spawn that drops the relic when killed, which lasts for around 45 seconds on the ground, so you can basically kill the captain when damage starts. Then when the text prompts show Morgeth at around 80% strength, have someone collect the relic and use the relic's super ability on Morgeth to launch a taken blast forward, stunning him in the process and ending the damage phase. After that, the encounter restarts like normal, and once you return and start your second damage phase, if you're certain you can send him to final stand, don't worry about killing the Eye of Riven since it won't be necessary, and when this happens, Morgeth will teleport away and a portal will appear in the center of the heart. Taking this portal puts you at the beginning of the Morgeth jumping puzzle, with Morgeth himself waiting at the end of it. So hastily make your way across, and once you reach the other side, there are several more taken strengths that need to be collected to lower his shield, and after you do that, kill him as quickly as possible, and congratulations, you have bested Pantheon Morgeth, who in my humble opinion is the coolest boss rework out of all of them. With regards to the encounter challenge, this one is super easy. All you need to do is, before freeing somebody as the relic player in the main arena, break the acolyte eyes above his head first, then free them. After Morgeth, we are moving on to the final encounter, Insurrection Prime, the returning final boss from the vaulted Scourge of the Past raid, who has come back with familiar mechanics but remixed in a fun and creative way. Before you start, split your team into 2 groups of 3, and in one of those groups, preferably the first, assign one player to be your map reader. Then, to begin the encounter, walk forwards and kill the fallen berserker by breaking the plating on his chest and back at the same time. Then have your map reader collect the core he drops and deposit it next to the rally flag, or in this case, your friend who wanted to be in the video. At this point, as the map reader, you'll be presented with a hollow map that has 3 different pieces of information. The yellow circles are each of your teammates, the red triangles are berserkers, and the green squares are core deposit locations. Additionally, one of the berserkers will have a red orb above its head. Take note of this one because it's going to be important later. After you note down the location of the correct berserker, leave the map and head down underground with your 2 other teammates, and look around for fallen terminals that open up and present you with a shape. Meleeing this shape will grant you 1 stack of phase radiance, and there are 3 different types: angular, parallel, and continuous radiance, each denoted by a different shape. The goal here is to have each of the 3 downstairs players collect 1 unique phase radiance each, and do keep in mind there is a 4th red radiance, but this one will wipe you if you hit it by accident, so avoid it at all costs. Though once everyone downstairs has their own radiance, the 3 remaining upstairs players will need to kill a giant servitor, which turns off the electricity, blocking the downstairs team from escaping. The upstairs team will also be in charge of breaking 6 glowing white weak spots on the boss that will lower his shield after breaking them all. And furthermore, during certain attacks, exposed fusion cores can be shot to interrupt the attacks and also extend the boss's wipe timer. After the downstairs team escapes with radiance, both teams essentially swap jobs, and it's now the second team of 3's turn to go downstairs and collect their own radiance too. Now that you, as the map reader, have returned from underground, go back to the map and direct your other 2 teammates to the location of the correct berserker, which in this case is bottom left, and then those 2 players will need to kill the berserker, upon which he will drop 2 more nuclear cores, which need to be deposited to spawn a tank that will allow you to stun Insurrection Prime and begin the damage phase. When one of the 2 Radiance players collects a core, the map reader will see a certain number of yellow dots above their head, indicating which dunk station they need to deposit the core at. In this example here, the first player to collect a core has 1 dot above their head, meaning they will need to go to deposit 1 at the top of the map, and the second player has 2 dots above their head, meaning they will need to go to deposit 2 in the bottom right. After both of their cores are deposited, this should be around the point that Team 2 is ready to come back outside from underground, so kill their servitor, let them out, and again, 2 of those players should run off and defeat the new correct berserker, which in this case is the mid-left location on the map. After the second set of cores are correctly deposited, tanks will spawn at all 3 core deposit locations, and all you need to do now is get in the tank and shoot the boss, assuming he is in a favorable spot for damage. Once damage begins, you will want to distribute your team in specific pairs so that you activate a damage buff called Phase Synergy that is visible on the left of your screen during damage. And to do this, 2 players who have the same phase radiance will want to stand next to one another. So Continuous 1 stands with Continuous 2, Angular 1 with Angular 2, and Parallel 1 with Parallel 2, ideally in a triangle formation. For years, teams have debated whether the distribution of CAP or ACP is considered correct, but I'm here to tell you that CAP is the only way to go about it. So make sure your Continuous players stand left ways, your Angular players stand central, and your Parallel players stand right ways. Furthermore, during damage, Insurrection Prime will intermittently emit radiance pulses that have the chance to change what radiance you are holding, meaning you will need to shuffle around and get into the correct spot according to CAP if yours changes when this happens. If you don't manage to one phase, the encounter resumes like normal, and upon killing the boss, you also have a chance to obtain the Anarchy Catalyst, because as most will remember, Anarchy was the raid exotic attached to Scourge of the past, and the catalyst is jolting feedback, by the way. The challenge for this encounter is also the exact same one from back in the day. Each player must break 1 weak spot each on the boss. So that about does it for my guide for the full Monument of Triumph Pantheon. It's so awesome to finally have all these Sunset bosses back in the game and restored to their former glory. RAP to Valkaor though, rest in peace, King. If you've got any questions, please be sure to leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to answer. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you found the guide helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.